Hey, Rebecca, how are you? Welcome to Automate All the
I'm good. How
Things.
are you?
I'm good. I'm
I'm
really
excited to be here.
excited to, yeah, it means I think I'm really excited for you here because I think this is going to be fun both from like what we're going to build together and how you can improve your workflow, but also I think so impactful in terms of, uh, the work that you do. So I'd love to maybe start there. So, a quick intro into yourself, Rebecca, and then maybe talk a little bit about Enterprise Village and what you guys do.
Yeah, my name's Rebecca, and I've actually been with Village Enterprise for about 8 to 9 months now. Before that, I was in the Peace Corps. So I was in the Peace Corps for 7 months. And for anyone who knows what the Peace Corps is and how long it usually is, that's a very short amount of time. So I joined in August of 2019 and I actually was evacuated March of 2020 because of COVID. And I
Okay.
was in sub-Saharan Africa. Yeah, and then I went back home. I'm from Colorado, and I was thinking about, what do I want to do? And I found Village Enterprise, and I joined Village Enterprise in August of 2020. Um, yeah, August of 2020, and it's such a great organization. I now live in the Bay Area, and the work that we do really aligns with a lot of my values. So we're a registered 501c3, and we work to alleviate extreme poverty in East Africa, and we expand into other parts of Africa and hopefully other continents down the line. But we do like a 5 step process where we target people who are earning $1.90 US dollars or less per day. And then we teach them financial literacy, savings, all that, partner them with groups of three to create a business. And then they join a business savings group, which is, 30 entrepreneur, 10 business groups. And they save money, support each other. And then we mentor them and provide seed capital. And it's been proven. We've done a couple of randomized control tests, and it's sustainable. So that's been really exciting.
Yeah. So today we're going to solve, in part, in some way, not directly, like world hunger on the
Yeah.
screen. Is that right? So this is what we're doing today. So, folks, we are going to talk about Airtable, but first we've got to solve world hunger, and then we're going to go on to Airtable.
Yeah.
So I think it's really interesting because I think my understanding of what you do is you actually do it like you enable these people to be entrepreneurs in a sense, right? So it's not about obviously subsidizing to an extent, but it's really giving them and empowering them, giving them the tools to do this themselves.
Yeah. So we really focus mostly on development uh, instead of aid, because development is proven to be more sustainable.
Right.
And when you empower other people, then they can go forth and empower their community.
Totally. That's amazing. Now, maybe zooming in like from this grand
Yeah.
goal, what is your role in that goal and how do you use maybe Airtable to underpin? So like I'm trying to create a house of cards where ultimately yes, we're
Yeah.
hoping to empower and do this amazing cause, and you are a big cog in that, making that happen. And Airtable hopefully is a little bit of something that helps you do that. So talk a little bit about what it is that you do there, and how Airtable or whatever software that we can kind of talk about
Yeah.
today fits into that.
Yeah. So my role is development coordinator. So I do a lot of fundraising and marketing communications. So our goal is to communicate with a wider audience, typically like an external audience who doesn't really um, understand all the like big international development words. And then we kind of take that information and package it in a way that is easily understandable by audiences. So the way that we started using Airtable is for our editorial calendar. So we plan newsletters and blogs and social media and all of that, but then it became pretty much a to manage all of our projects. So we have impact
Mm-hmm.
reports that we send out to donors, and we have annual reports, and we have these big campaigns for cause marketing partnerships. So it's just become like basically like our digital planner. so we can go
Right.
through and we can be like, all right, what do we have going on this month? What do we need to prepare for? What's the approval process? And it's really made that, especially working remotely, just so much like makes so much more sense.
Yeah. So Rebecca has some Wi-Fi issues that we'll just have to live with because it's 2021 and we're all working from home, and we all have deep empathy for that situation. Me first and foremost, as someone who's tried to run hundreds of webinars from home with sometimes a receptive and sometimes a non-cooperative Wi-Fi. So we are here with you, Rebecca, and to everyone joining, I appreciate the empathy in advance for Rebecca's situation. And so I'm hearing some folks in the chat. So Dan is saying that, okay, you're talking about the Wi-Fi issues. I thought you were also going to create a editorial calendar in Airtable. So what I'm hearing is actually two parts to this. There's a project management of like general project management, of which one big project is content,
Mm-hmm.
right? So kind of going deeper into those content pieces. So and right now you have that in two bases, right? So you're kind of separating that.
Yes.
Okay. And that's probably where we're going to start. So I think I haven't, so you have projects, you have content, and all of this ultimately ends up on a website or social media. So our goal for today is just going to be kind of
Mm-hmm.
improving that. So maybe talk a little bit about what are the challenges that you're facing, or what are some of the things you'd like to see improved in your current content calendar, and then we'll jump into the base. We'll overview, and then we'll write out those issues and work on them over the next hour. So what are some of those challenges that you're facing?
Yeah. So one of our challenges right now that I noticed is, you can go into the apps and you can visualize a Gantt chart, but I've had a couple issues trying to share that with other people and trying to
Mm-hmm.
see, like, because we're such a small team, how certain projects overlap. And, if I'm responsible for 5 different things, are they all happening on the same day? And how do I plan my time around that? So that's one of the things that we've been really trying to figure out is more of
Yeah.
an individual workflow compared to the big picture. And then also, automating a response. So if I'm doing something online and I want to, ask for approval from my supervisor, how does she automatically get informed about that?
Yeah. Awesome. Okay.
Mm.
Okay, those feels like good buckets. So let's put those two as like the things we want to end with. So better visibility into like individual work versus global work. You already mentioned the word Gantt, and then second, kind of those automations. So let's actually jump in to your base, and I'll just look at it. I've given it a look, but I'll look at it, note some things, and then we're gonna jump in. So this is the bit where I share my screen so you can see it, and then now everyone should also see a part of, there we go. All right, so this is the first of two bases. So this is your kind of project tracker base. Can
Mm-hmm.
folks, I can move this a little bit like that. Can folks still see my base? How's that looking? There we go. Okay, cool. There we go. Okay, this looks good. Oh, a little bit more. There we go. Looks good. Awesome. It's like a different time, so everything is different, right? Like I'm just so used to doing this at 6 p.m. Eastern that I feel like I'm completely off my usual setup. But cool. Okay, so you have your project tracker, and then we have your content calendar. But first, let's start here. So talk to me about what it is you track in this base. We're going to start with a base overview. We're going to talk about whether it's one base or two bases, talk about views, Gantt, and then apps and automations as a way to augment your workflow. But first, I want to get a good understanding of this base. So you've got campaigns.
Mm-hmm.
What is a campaign to you? Talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I think it's just like a little bit easier for me to talk about maybe one in specific.
Yeah.
So right now we're doing a big campaign for International Women's Month. So
Yeah.
within that, we have multiple pieces of content, which you can see on the content slide. And then we have, the given is in December, so we want to start tracking that.
Right.
And um, yeah, so we try to keep it all under buckets that make sense. And then some of those
Yeah.
are partnerships. So AWF is the African Foundation, um,
Yeah.
Starbucks Foundation, Days for Girls, stuff like
Got
that.
it. Okay, so campaign is like your organizing bucket under which pieces of content
Yeah.
fall into, but it's not only content. There might be other things that fall into a campaign.
Yeah.
So okay, interesting. So the first thing I'll do, if it's okay with you, I'm gonna start working on your base. And the first thing is you have a lot of like not grouped into status. So talk to me about, why doesn't Starbucks Days for Girls have a start date and an end date? Is it just that you don't know what those are, right? And that, the status is
So
unclear?
yeah, so for a lot of these, because of COVID, the start date kind of got moved around,
Right,
or
right,
like we start the program and then we're not sure like when we're starting to tell about the program. And
right.
when you do like these 2-year grants, it's like we don't really have a date for that. If, maybe 5 years down the line, we want to be like, oh, we did this partnership. So it's a little bit confusing. And I would say right now, like we're 2 people on our team. It's hard to kind of conceptualize like when are we going to start something? When are we end it?
Yeah, totally. And that's okay. Like it's okay to have
Mm-hmm.
not all the information filled out. I think that's one of the things about Airtable that's great is like you can actually just be like, okay, what are the pieces or campaigns for which we have content, or at least that we've decided that we're going to go ahead and work on today, right? So those
Yeah.
with a start date and an end date. So maybe what we do as a starting point is just
Mm-hmm.
let's focus in on those that you're going to work with,
Yeah.
right? So those that are kind of not in the air, if you will, and let's go create a kind of a view which is current campaigns, or maybe not current, right?
Oh.
Like official campaigns. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So for folks who are a little less familiar with Airtable, what I'm going to create now is a view, which is just a different way of visualizing your information. So we're just going to say, instead of seeing all of my records, all of the information at once, let's hone in on some piece of information that we can work from. But we're going to continue the overview of the base. I'm just doing this little sidebar to say these are official campaigns. So where start date is not empty, right? So this is just saying, okay, these are the campaigns that we've defined. Defined is a good, I'm bad at naming views. I think defined campaigns is
That's
good.
good.
I like it. Then from here, it kind of makes sense to say, let's organize these by start date,
Mm.
right? So now if I change and say something, this one is actually before the 12th, it'll reorganize automatically. So I'm kind of seeing them as I want. I'm going to undo that to not mess with your information. And then, what feels right is something like status. Let's group this by status,
Mm.
right? So these might be, I'm going to put these in to do, right? Just so we have something.
Yeah.
And last note here, I can't help myself. This is what happens when you see enough Airtable bases, is that you're currently using the default ones. Know that you can
Mm-hmm.
change these, right?
Yeah.
So you can say like soon, in progress, and done, and that way you're kind of good to go here. So this makes sense. Simple stuff. Let me know in the chat if this makes sense to folks. I'm doing two things. I'm getting an overview of the base, and then kind of, because I can't help myself, small edits. Okay, so content gets funneled is associated to different campaigns, right? So here, if I'm understanding these correctly, we have 3 campaigns: International Women's Month, Village Impact, and Receipt Stories, which have pieces of content. So you've got 26 for International Women's Month. You've got 1 for Receipt Stories, and then 3 for Village Impact. Can you talk to me a little bit about what goes into this table?
Yeah. So for this table, we really just like list out every single action that someone is going to take in order to complete this campaign. So something that I did that I loved with Airtable was creating a column that says like the type of content. So
Mm,
for us, we have social media, we have a blog, we have tons of different things. Is this going to be a slide deck? Is it going to be a toolkit? So that's just been really great for kind of conceptualizing like how much time is going to take me to do this.
right.
And then, who is going to be in charge of this as well. So that's something that I really
Yeah.
love to add. And then we
Yes.
have, our content, responsible parties, and then a little bit of a description of for someone who's coming into this, what is this going to look like?
Yeah, this looks great. So essentially, how you structure these campaigns is you essentially just have like a start date and an end date, and then you
Mm-hmm.
the word list out, right? So you add records. In
Yeah.
Airtable, every line here is called a record, and essentially saying, okay, for International Women's Month, we are gonna have a social media toolkit for partners. That's some pro work that we need to do. You have an assigned status, who's responsible for it, notes,
Mm-hmm.
end date. This looks fantastic. Like this looks really great. Yeah, no, Airtable Pro here. I feel you're in a couple weeks you'll be giving these consulting sessions yourself. Come back to automate all
Yeah,
the
I mean,
things in 2 weeks.
we
Run by Rebecca.
updated to
So
Airtable Pro, and I have to say it's so worth it.
yeah, yeah, no, we're gonna explore some of that. I'm
Yeah.
curious to kind of like actually show. So what? Okay, this looks great. Project tracker. We've got campaigns. We've got status for each one.
Mm-hmm.
Now I think where I'm really interested is that you actually use two bases.
Yes.
You actually have a content calendar with campaigns. So we recognize International Women's Month, and then content pipeline, which is different somehow from the other content. So talk to me a little bit about why two bases, and then I'm gonna probably answer you why this should be in one base.
Yes. So if you see on the project tracker content, sometimes it'll just have a link and it'll be like another Airtable link. Um,
Okay.
so that one's boxed, but if you go to social media,
Social media right here. Yeah.
yeah, so right there, it's just gonna take you to another Airtable.
Uh huh.
And I just because I'm so like I didn't want to have too many things on one platform.
Okay.
And then with social media, like within that, there's buckets of like LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram and
Right.
Facebook. So I think it would be really useful to have it all in one place. It's just, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's like a tree
Okay.
that has so many branches that I'm worried I'm going to lose.
That's totally normal. So there's a few things here that I want to kind of like piece out, right? So what I'm hearing from you is like
Mm-hmm.
you're like, okay, well, if we start adding all of these tweets or kind of things that need to happen for at the content level, it's just too much, right? That's what you're kind of worried about, and I think that's totally normal. And as someone who does not handle a lot of information at once very well, I am deeply empathetic with that. What is each one of these records? Like like here it's clear to me that a record, you're going to say, okay, for International Women's Month, intro social post 1, that's going to be one post. Is it multiple posts? And that way you're like, oh, well, for this social post, it's actually a Facebook post, a tweet. Like, what is a record here is what I'm wondering.
So where it says IWD week one, day one, that is
Yeah, right
actually
here.
exactly, yeah, that is the social post one.
Okay. Okay. And so
Yeah.
you do this so you don't forget to post on social in that day.
And it has like the different copy and the images that might be going with that.
Oh, okay, right. There's some other. So let's
Yeah.
expand the record. So we're just looking into here. and you're
Mm-hmm.
saying, okay, there's like additional information in these hidden fields. Okay, so this is the
Yeah.
subheadline. This is what. So you draft all of this attachment,
Mm-hmm.
right? Campaign. So
Yeah.
so what if you look at content? What is this related to? So what does social post one map to in here? Is it day one? So like I'm wondering what is the link between content and the individual posts? Does that make sense?
Yeah. So yeah, they're the same thing, honestly. So if you're seeing intro social post one, that
Mm-hmm.
is the IWD week one post, like day one.
Okay. Okay. So I'm gonna present to you kind of two. What I think is ideal is you just create one base. So what we're gonna do, I'm gonna show you it, and for folks worried, this is my base. I'm not messing with Rebecca's base. She gave me a copy, and so. But what I think is important to you is that you still want to view it this way, right? So this way of viewing your information is really important to you. But there's additional information that is important and maybe important to you only, right? So I'll show you how to like keep
Yeah.
this view, and it's actually the default way that Airtable works, that when you're adding new information for your records across your workflow, your existing views are not impacted, right? So if I add a new field, it's going to stay hidden in those existing views. So let's actually like kind of do this. So let's imagine I'm going to duplicate this view, and I'm going to call this social media management, right? So what I'm hearing from you is that these are specific to social media, right? So we're going to add an extra filter
Yeah.
that says only show me where status, not status, sorry, where I think you have it as type,
Yeah.
where type is exactly social media. I think I saw here. Was there any other things that you track except social media in that content calendar in this one?
Honestly, no.
Okay. Okay,
Yeah.
this is gonna be easier than I thought.
Yeah.
Uh, so then you have like a individual status per post. We can probably reuse this status, right? We're not gonna kind of create another one. We can have like a per post status. Publish date, I
Uh-huh.
imagine, is the same one as this one right here.
Yeah.
Channel is different though. Channel is not an existing field. So
Yeah.
this is a pro tip. And it's
Okay.
very good for, so just hide all. So you hide all your fields and you're like, what is actually important? Status feels important. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
notes, maybe responsible parties. You seem like you're responsible for everything, which is interesting. You know,
Yeah.
you're on all of these, which is okay. Um, and then we're going to add a new field, right, which is mapping your existing field, right? So we're going to say, okay, what are the channels we want to post on? It's going to be a multi-select. And I'm going to just create that field. And I'm just going to, for ease of use, I'm just going to copy paste like this, right? So it's going to go ahead and create the channels that you
Oh,
already had.
wow.
And that just saves you a lot of time in terms of like just writing all that information again. And it seems like you always post on all channels. So I'm just going to go ahead and drag and drop like that. And now you have like your channels for each one of those posts. And what's cool about this is if I go back to campaign, you'll notice that that's a hidden field here, right? So channels is not visible. So for Ali or Christine or and like, they don't really, maybe not care is not the right word, but like they're not worried about what channel you're posting on. You've got your social media view that has the information you want. Then everyone else has their information or whoever else. And pro tip, if you're the only person, you can just create a personal view. That
Okay.
way, people who come to this, uh, people saw your reaction to copy pasting and just filling in the options, and they're really excited about it. Uh, now, I do want to like, so this was an example of like, well, I think you are rightfully, I don't say worried, but it is a normal pattern to look at a bunch of information and say, okay, I want to separate this. And that's very much like an Excel or spreadsheet reflex.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, oh, if we put all of this in one place, no one's going to be able to find themselves. So what I recommend to you is like have very good view hygiene, right? And in a few ways you can do that is by adding descriptions, right? So you can say, use this view to get an overview of all our campaigns and content pieces. You can save that description. And then when people come into this view sidebar, they can kind of get an understanding of what that view is.
Yeah.
And for here, you can say like, Rebecca view, Rebecca only. You can get wild with it. Add some emojis as well. So if you have any kind of like, I don't know if I could like that, right? So don't touch this view. That's my view, right? You can add emojis in there. Very key when working in Airtable. Now, I know this is not going to be necessarily relevant to you, but I do want to we've taken the decision to go into one base. So if we go into our description, we said one base. We could checkbox. Now, that might not always be the right decision. So let's imagine there's a question, how did I open emojis? So I'm on a Mac. So you do Alt, Control, Space together. And that opens your Windows or Mac emoji picker. And you could put emojis anywhere in Airtable. So let's say you want to add an emoji to this one is how I feel about a lot of projects I'm in. Right? There you go. So you can do that. And if you put it at the beginning, that actually becomes your emojis. Oh no, this one already, see that you can pick it as the overlay for your, so if I go back to the workspace, my project tracker has this is I'm dropping some like very important Airtable knowledge.
Yeah.
View emoji pickers are crucial. So if you're not on a Mac, as long as you could use an emoji select, I don't know whether it is the equivalent for Windows, but I'm sure that there is one where if you can pull up a emoji picker, you can add emojis. I know this is possible on a Windows. I'm going to add that to our checklist. Very important that we talked about emojis.
Mm-hmm. Emoji
management. Should just have a 5-minute dedicated on every stream talking about emojis and how they fit into people's workflows.
It's important.
What was I talking about, Rebecca? Do you remember?
Oh, whether I want to use multiple bases or one base.
Yes, thank you. Good. Appreciate that. Okay, so let's imagine that you have different teams. So let's go create a view that is all content. Right? And this is just all content, unfiltered, and you have different types. So let's group them by type. Quick tip here, just a small note. This is currently a multi-select, but you're only picking one per type. I would recommend changing this to a single select because that will make it possible to create a Kanban and other stuff. So small thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So if you have a multi-select, you can't create a Kanban because you can't create like individual groupings. So what I've just done is I've turned from multi-select to single select, and Airtable keeps the same colors. It does that switch for you. It's just a more flexible field. Where was it? Yes, multiple bases. Yes. Okay, so let's imagine that you have this is going great in I'm sure a couple months now that you're on Airtable, everything's moving smoothly, getting a bunch of grant money. that every single type of piece of content requires different teams, different workflows, and that you eventually have a 8-person social media team that needs to do like itemized tasks or workflows for each type of content, right? And it's just, you'll get 50 tables, it'll become unmanageable. I think you're not there, but that might be a situation you find yourself in. So let's go ahead and create one day soon. You'll come back on the stream next year and you're going to show us your 50 table base and you're going to say, I just can't anymore. How do we fix this? And I'll point you to this timestamp in the stream. So let's imagine we're creating like a new base. I'm going to go ahead and create a view that's just social media.
Okay.
And we're going to filter down to type, where type is social media, right? So this is just essentially saying, okay, only show me, and the information that I do want to share, type I don't need, type I need. No, I don't need it. I know it's social media. Status feels good. Campaign, sure, we can add campaign. Responsible parties, let's remove that. Notes, end date, that feels right. Channels feels right. Channels feels important. Okay. And let's say the social media team works out of a new base, the content calendar base. I should actually create a new one. Makes more sense. We're going to call this social media management. And what we'd love is that the kind of information we've decided at the project tracker level gets funneled in to this social media. And then from here, we itemize, I think, the tasks. Itemize, right?
I think it's itemize, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so what we'd love
like
is that, yeah, I think that makes sense. It's so close to automate. I'm so used to saying that. So let's go ahead and pull this view, all of the information in this view, into our social media. And then from there, we can associate the right task to the right piece of content or to the right social media post, right? So what we'd love is that any updates here kind of get funneled into our other base. So you can imagine like you and your executive team are deciding on what social media posts or what projects need to happen. And you want to share that information across the multiple teams that kind of feed off of that information or need it for their work. We're very simple use case here. So I'm going to go ahead and share a view. So what this does is that anyone who goes to this URL can kind of see the information, right? But that's not enough. I don't want to only see the information. I want to use this information in my own base so I can say this task is related to this social media post. A more apt example I should have done was campaigns. These social media posts relate to these campaigns, but let's keep it here. So what I can do here is allow data to be synced to other bases, right? Does that make sense? So we're going to be able to pull this information into another base. Was that too quick? And I'll do the syncing in a moment.
I was just thinking about what I was trying to do when I was doing the project and the content.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And was syncing something you were is this what you were prioritizing? Because I do think in your case, one base is better.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think when I was trying to do multiple bases, I wanted them to kind of talk, but I didn't know how to allow data to be synced. So I did the same exact thing manually.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, no, exactly. And so this would at least automate that. It's not necessary, but this is a good example of like, if you get to a point where multiple teams rely on your information, but work out of their own base. And I love that example you used of talking. This is a way for bases to talk to each other. If you're okay with it, I might steal that as the way I explain syncing going forward.
That's okay.
Yeah? There's royalties.
Yeah.
I make no money off of this stream, but if I ever was, maybe there's some royalty money in here.
Yeah, maybe.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it. So let's go through the. So I've enabled sync, right? So what this means is I can
Okay.
sync this view to another base. How I like to do that is that I just like to open up the share view link. I can use this data, right? So clicking, and then I can say, okay, sync to another workspace. So this is my live stream. I'm going to sync it to my social media management base. And it's going to create a new sync table. And this table will always be up to date with the latest social media posts,
Oh,
right? So
wow.
it's like a normal table. It's got a little thing here. You can create
Yeah.
views in this one. So all posts by status. We're going to group this by status. Now let's filter out those who don't have a status,
Yeah.
where status is, is not empty, right?
Mm.
And now, what I think is like you can create as this feels just like any other table. But what's great about it is
Yeah.
that let's say we update here. So SBU UX social post 1, the leaders, aka you, we gotta get a to do. Get on it, right? Or change the due date. Now I'm gonna do this manually, but this happens every 5 minutes on your end, so automatically. So we see that that's now a new record.
Oh, wow.
So someone needs to time. That's another like a moment where we could just cut Rebecca's face. Uh, um, so
It's so
this means,
cool.
yeah, I agree with you. I remember the first time I did sync. I still feel like it's a little magical, right? So just that ability to share
Yeah.
information across bases. And one step further about this. So let me just, I'm gonna ride your continue on your excitement. Is that because this is like a normal table, I can associate records to it, right? So let's say I do tasks. Let's imagine like those are the individual things that your team only tracks. I can have task 1, task 2, task 3, and let's say they're related to, social post 3,
Yeah.
right? That's let me just delete the standard fields. I can link to another record. I can link to social media, create that field, and say, task 1 is to, what did I, view? Yeah,
Yeah.
there we go. I can take that, paste it over, and now I that information comes from our sync table, and I could pull information. So let's say I have a due date, and I could look up information. Lookup lets you share information across tables. So I'm saying, go get me the end date. So let me just rename this to social media post. And now, so let's do the whole loop. And I think you'll like it. So let's imagine that someone says, you know what, we're not posting on the 19th. SBUX social post 1 is now on the 26th. So that's something you're deciding in one base. So campaign changes, actor grant money didn't come through. It's a different amount.
Yeah.
Someone relies on that work, but don't necessarily need to have access to everything. Now, if they go to their base where you're syncing information to, and you, again, automated on your end, I'm doing it manually, you'll notice that just changed, right?
Okay.
And so now those changes are synced to other bases, including the lookup, right? So that person now comes in and knows that this is now the penultimate due date. So your changes can kind of trickle through the organization. Make sense?
Yeah. No, this makes sense.
Questions about sync before I dive into apps and automations?
So, can I only create like sync, or can I create like a this type of thing for someone else in my organization?
So you can create as many syncs. Any view can be synced from.
Okay.
So I created one for social media, but it is just as flexible as your filter allows you to be.
Okay.
So there's some questions in the chat, and I'm gonna keep dropping them if you have questions about sync. I can talk about sync all day. So any grid view can be synced from. So maybe another example, I've done social media. Maybe you want, responsible parties. Maybe you want to create your own base with your own tasks.
Yeah.
Right? So you filter down to where responsible parties includes Rebecca, and then sync from there.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I was thinking because like if I could create one of these for my supervisor of all things that like need approval, and then she just has that, I feel like that would make things like a lot smoother.
So a good question. Now I'm going to turn this. Why do you want why not just create a view for your manager of things that need to be approved?
That is an excellent question.
Thank you. I think so there is a decisional tree here.
Yeah.
Right? In 99% of cases, you want a view.
Okay.
And that's true for most things in Airtable. Create a new table, ask yourself, should you create a view? Right? Creating a new base, ask yourself, should you create a new view? A sync, usually a view.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So you're going to end up in that view most of the time because views are the most flexible thing you could create. So even if you had 10 fields that were unrelated to most people, it's okay because you can just hide them. Right? So in an example of that, social media management, your manager probably is uninterested in what channel you're posting on. Maybe they only care about the copy and want a check mark on approval.
Yeah.
So let's imagine that was the situation. So I don't know who, maybe we'll call him Rebecca Manager View. Right? Yeah. So I don't know. Let's imagine it's responsible parties. Has any of Rebecca, right? Let's imagine that it's social media, right? So kind of before they go out, and type is social media, right? Status is done maybe, or to be reviewed. Maybe you want to add a status here.
Yeah.
To be reviewed. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely.
Great. This actually really goes nicely into where we're going. So I really like this.
Yeah.
This is a good segue. You should really host this stream.
I don't have the internet capability apparently.
Yes, but we can make that work. Okay. I think that's fixable.
Okay.
So let's imagine that, these are to be reviewed. Let's give it like let's change the color. I don't like the two yellows. Like a purple feels right. I don't know. To be reviewed. So filter, let's add a third filter, which is to be reviewed. So type or status is to be reviewed. And what do people want to review? So date doesn't seem to, maybe due date, yeah. Type, we know that it's a social media. We know that it's to be reviewed. Copy content, that feels important. We should keep that.
Yeah.
Responsible parties, we know that it's you. Campaign, maybe. Notes, that feels maybe important. Channels. So make this really simple. Is this approved?
Yeah.
Right, and it's got a checkbox here. Right? And that's it. So you can say, okay, this has been approved. And once it's approved, we can filter it out.
Oh.
And approved is unchecked. So this is the Rebecca Manager view. Make this a little larger. right? So let's say this is approved. Boom, it leaves, right? So we kind of inbox 0 is what we're going for.
Yeah.
So you can, and this approved is irrelevant to every other view, and that's okay because it's automatically hidden in all views that already have a hidden field.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So now there's a question of how do we email, like your manager doesn't spend their day in Airtable.
Just refreshing this page.
Yeah, just I just imagine someone being like, Rebecca, come on, I need to approve this social media post. Everyone's got better things to do.
Yeah.
So what we'd love is like a notification to that person, like, hey, something is ready for your approval. So let's set that up. Let's do that. That's actually our kind of next step, which was how do we do automated approvals? I'm just gonna. We've done views, we've done base overview, we've gone a little bit all over the place, which is fun. Okay, so apps and automations. So automations here in the top right is trigger action sequences that let you create business logic on top of your Airtable base. That's like a very fancy way to say, anytime you say if this, then I'd like that to happen. In our case, we'd like to say when something is ready for approval, send that manager that piece of information that they need to review it, right? That is an automation. Automation is always a trigger and then actions. So we want to say manager approval. That's what we're calling this one. And then triggers are kind of like the if part. In our situation, we're saying when a social post, I'm going to expand that, has status to be reviewed, right? So when that happens, the moment you update that status, that's when you want your manager to be notified that, right? So we're going to choose a trigger. Triggers are what need to happen for your automation to run. In our case, we're saying when a record has status to be reviewed. So that's when record matches conditions. So we're going to specify exactly the conditions that a record needs to match to run the automation. And I know in theory, this is weird. Let me build one out and I think it'll make sense. So I'm going to say when a piece of content, when a record in that piece of content, let's give ourselves a little more space. Let's add the status back in here. So when a status has to be reviewed, let's go and get a record. So this is just getting a test. Okay, there's some questions in the chat that I'll get to in just a moment, right? So stick with me, folks. So this is the conditions that a record must have for this automation to run. So this by itself does nothing. It just says when a record has status to be reviewed, run this automation. And actions are what you want that record to, what you want that automation to do. It could be send an email, send a Slack message. I don't know, where do you guys work out of?
We use Slack. I didn't know that you could connect those.
You could connect Slack. You can send a Gmail email so it comes from your email. You can send an Airtable email, Microsoft Teams. Let's do Slack. Let's do Slack. Which Slack account do I have connected? That is a good question. Okay, no, it's a good one. It's my test account. So let's imagine this manager, if they're refreshing the table, they definitely want to be notified in general. Right? So everyone wants to know when your social media posts are ready to go. Right? So we're saying when a record hits to be reviewed, go to the general channel and send this message. So what do you want this message to say? Pressure.
I need your approval.
I need your approval.
I need your approval.
For this social post. Now, let's actually pull the name of the record. So there's like a little more context there instead of just like, hey, I need your approval. Hey, I need your approval, right? So we're saying, go to step 1. So I click the plus button, go to step 1, and add the name.
Wow.
So as the record comes in, you can actually give them context. And if you're impressed by that, you can just say, hey, go here. And then actually give them the URL.
Wow.
Right? So they can click in and see the whole record. Right?
Yeah.
So let's click done. That feels right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So let's imagine we are now Rebecca, the Rebecca view. And this eBlast, I got to turn it on. Very important. Don't forget to turn on your automations. The number one mistake I make, forgetting to turn on your automation. Okay. So let's say it's on. When a record is going to be reviewed, it's going to go ahead and send a Slack message. So eBlast, to be reviewed. Let's go into runs. It's saying, okay, it's got a record. It's running.
Mm-hmm.
Give it a moment. Ran successfully. Now I'm just going to hide folks from my... I don't have to do this live on the stream. Just give me a second here. I got to hide my Slack from you all. Give me a second here, folks. I got to open Slack. And what we're hoping to see here is actually like a Slack message in the general channel that has two things. The name of the social post that we're running. And then second, a link to that specific. And here we go. So I'm going to go back, share. Okay, now everyone could see it. So I need your approval for this social post. Hey, go here. And it actually gives you that URL. So imagine I'm the manager. All I do is I click here. And then we bring this here. And now I'm open and I have the record right in front of me. Right? Mm-hmm. So that is an example of what automations can do, right? So here, anytime something is to be reviewed, it's going to go ahead and send a Slack message to the person, letting them know that they need to review it. Now, a few things to think about here. You probably don't want to send your manager every time something is to be reviewed. Maybe you want a field that has a reviewer who's responsible for reviewing. And then you could adjust your automation to factor that in. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, let me move this back. All right. Where are we in our agenda here? Do you feel confident adding automations now? I guess is a good question. Do folks in the chat let me know if you're as impressed as Rebecca, and do you feel confident of adding some simple automations in your own bases as well? So how are you feeling, Rebecca?
I think I'm probably going to rewatch this later.
Okay.
And because it's useful. I just think, I've been focusing on this. I haven't been like taking notes. So I'll watch it again as a viewer. Yeah.
Yeah. So what questions do you might have for your future self that you'd like answered, that you're going to be like, oh, I wish I asked that question? I feel like I've been like throwing so much at you in this last hour. So I want to give you some time to ask some questions.
I know. I know, like open a whole can of worms, but I was hoping you could quickly show me view.
Gantt view?
Yeah.
What? No, it's not. That's not a can of worms. That's joy. Let's do it. Let's talk about Gantt view.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. Okay. So Gantt view. So Gantt charts are essentially horizontal, kind of see what things overlap with one another. And I think a good one might be campaigns, right? So you have a start date and an end date, and pieces of content are like on a punctual date, right? So it doesn't really make sense to have a Gantt chart. So let's go into campaigns. And then maybe we'll have tasks that have a start date and an end date relative to those campaigns, right? So I'm going to go ahead and add a Gantt. So it's a view. So I'm just going into campaigns, adding a Gantt. And I'm going to call this all campaigns. And that's it. You have a Gantt view, right? So you now can kind of see what campaigns overlap. You can color them by status, right? Just like any other view. So let's filter out those that don't have a status. Oh, isn't it should be is not empty. There we go. Right. And, you can, what's usually what you do is you create dependencies to say this needs to come before that. So Gantt is really powerful when you have a project, either as a linked record or as a single select. And then you want to see, let me see all kind of things that roll up into that. You don't have that structure right now.
Okay.
So let me give you an example, because right now your content just has a start date, if I'm not mistaken. Oh no, there's an end date and there's a date.
Yeah, but it's confusing. Yeah.
Yeah. It seems like it's always the same one.
Yeah, I think for these, because it goes out on a certain date.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So just for folks who are new to Airtable, when you have a single date, that's usually perfect for calendar view. Right? So here you have your calendar. Right now you got it colored, so I don't want to mess with that. But let's duplicate. Actually, no, this is my base. I can mess with this base. I can color by status or by type. Right? So now I can kind of see my calendar and everything that relates to it, but it's very much on this like calendar format. Doesn't show you overlap necessarily between projects, but does that single date versus dual date relatively well. Right? So in this case, we've got it configured so that you're from date to end date, but I can just show date, right? So this is giving like what you need to post. This is a good example of a Gantt, but what you want is that like how a project rolls up into all of its pieces. So let me show you. I think I did one here. Yeah, here's a good example I think I did last week. We'll just give you an example. Right? So I have these different action items that are linked to a specific project. So then if I collapse that project, I can see its start and end date and get a sense of how many workdays we're working on it. But then as I expand it, it breaks down into its relevant parts. And I can create dependencies between these. To say this needs to happen before that. And as you create those dependencies, it'll give you like a critical path to say these are the tasks that need to happen in this order for you to hit those deadlines. Right?
Okay.
Very simple to set up. Just add a Gantt view. You have a start date, a due date. I'm grouping by single linked record. You can group by a single select.
Okay.
You can group by a status, whatever is relevant for your view. And just play around with it. It's very easy to set up and it's very easy to undo. So if you ever mess it up, you can redo it, undo it.
Sounds good.
Cool. Awesome. Did we hit we didn't hit apps. I don't think we'll have time to do apps.
That's okay.
We'll have to come back.
Yeah.
We'll have to do another one. You're going to build out your base. It's going to be much more complex and we're going to do apps. I want to answer some questions. Does anyone have any questions from the chat? Or just congratulating Rebecca on being such a good Airtable base builder. Like, I'm really impressed. This was really good. So questions.
Thank you.
So first question from Diane is, do you know that it's a one-way sync? So was it clear to you that when we said syncing, you cannot edit things in the destination table?
Yeah, I think I noticed that when it was happening.
So for everyone else that's not as laser focused as Rebecca, you cannot edit information in the destination table. So this is only somewhere where you're kind of putting information that kind of stems from. So it's a one-way sync. We forgot the confetti. You're totally right. We got to bust out the confetti for your awesome new base. It's on the stream. There's confetti falling down, congratulating you on such a great base.
I was like, where's the confetti?
I should make it rain down my screen as well. That'll be a future improvement.
Should.
Ethan, we need to make that happen. Okay, any other questions, folks? Now's a good time. So there was a question, how do we make the checkbox field be available and edit for manager only? Great question. Let's do it. I love these questions. People set me up to show cool stuff. So let's imagine that manager view, and I'm going to go here and I'm going to go edit field permissions. So right now, by default, every single view has level editors and up. That's by default. You can say only creators and up. So that's the permission levels when you invite someone. I'm seeing a little frown on your face. When you invite someone to the base, you can give them one of 4 permission levels. Creator, which is for people who build the base alongside you. Editors, who are just editing information. Commenter, read-only, self-explanatory. By default, editor and up can update information. But you can say, you know what? I don't want editors to edit my only, well, I only have one user. Only Aron. That's my manager, right? That's the only person who can edit that. So that's a way of restricting at the field level who has access to edit rights for a specific field. And this applies across all views. So it's not limited to this view. No one could edit this information except your manager. So now they get alerted and, they can do that checkbox. Awesome. Any other questions before we sign off for today? Obligatory follow if you want to be notified. I do this every week at 1 p.m. Eastern. Sometimes it's consulting. Sometimes it's Airtable. Sometimes it's other tools. Every week you'll learn something, I hope, and we'll build cool stuff together. You can go to AATT.io/calendar to learn about what's on in the following week, and you can subscribe to specific events. So really appreciate you coming out. Hope to see you in the future on Automate All the Things. Rebecca, everyone has telling you were such a great co-host today, and thank you so much for bringing this base and this challenge to us. I hope I don't know how to say this. Like, I hope you come back, but that means that you're having problems with your base, or I hope you come back as a host.
Yeah, I
or
guess
just come back. Exactly. Come back, and you're going to be showing other people how to build on Airtable pretty soon.
See. But I also have to plug Village Enterprise. So if you want to know more about Village Enterprise, you can go to villageenterprise.org, or you can find us on social media. Clearly, we have all the social media right now. But I can also write that in the chat.
Yeah, I'm writing it now. So
okay.
Folks, yes. No, so yeah, amazing project. It's been, an honor just to be able to help a little part of it. And it means a lot that you kind of shared this with us and allowed us to help you out. And truly best of, I don't know if luck is the right word. I'm just so excited about what you're doing, and I wish you all the best. Is that the right way to do it? Continued success.
Yeah, thank you so much. This has been really helpful.
Anything. If you need any other help, Airtable, otherwise, everyone loved you co-hosting. I had a blast. And you feel free to reach out anytime with any questions. And there's a question from Pam Elliott. Shoot me if you want me to do this for you, just like shoot over the base. You can reach out to me on Twitter, on whatever, on LinkedIn, anytime. I'm always happy to review your bases live. It's fun and it's useful and it's great. So let me know. Always happy to do it. This was great. This was such fun. I hope you had a little bit of fun, some value out of it. Rebecca, appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
All right. Well, thanks everyone. I hope to see you same time, same place next week. We've got Jeremy and Hallie coming on talking about how to use Airtable as a VC backend. So we're going to be talking about how to track emails, track pipelines. So if you're a salesperson, or you just like geeking out on Airtable, we're going to be doing a lot of Zapier as well. And Slack is going to be probably a big one next week. So yeah, going to be building some cool stuff. Hope to see you there. And yeah, every week, appreciate y'all joining out. See you, Rebecca. Thanks so much. It means the world.
Bye.
I will talk to you soon. Bye, everyone. Have a good one.